not a grand general, not a royal prince, nor a revolutionary leader. Yet amid the long years of China's turmoil, Xishan managed to hold on to an entire province as if it were his own private kingdom. People called him the benevolent warlord, a provincial king who knew how to live among the people, how to play with the powerful, and never forgot the path back to the middle ground.
The article below has been compiled from many sources. If there are any mistakes, or if you know any interesting information, feel free to leave a comment so I can learn as well. Now, let's begin the article.
The Keeper of Shanxi, Youth in an Age of Chaos. Xishan was not born to be a warlord. When young Yan first opened his eyes in the rural town of Qingqi, a small corner of Shanxi province, China was gasping for breath under the waning rule of the Qing dynasty. Cold winds from the northern frontier swept through the mountain ranges, seeping into earthen walls and thatched roofs. But amidst the biting chill, one thing never froze: the fierce will to survive among the people of the highlands. Yan grew up poor but not ignorant. His father, a low-ranking official, could read and write, stern but composed. A man who taught Yan that in a country like China, if you wanted to live without being crushed beneath the boots of the powerful, you had to know when to bow and when to grip your sword tightly. When Yan was 14, he witnessed a scene that would stay with him for life: the execution of a bandit in the county market. A jostling crowd, the pounding of war drums, then screams, blood splattered onto the soldiers' uniforms. But what haunted young Yan wasn't the blood. It was the bandit's eyes, cold, empty, no hatred, no fear, only one thing: acceptance. From that moment, Yan understood a truth that many learned too late. Power in China did not lie in the blade itself, but in knowing exactly when to draw it. And if one was to seize power, it was better to grip the handle than be sliced by the edge. In 1904, as Japan clashed with Russia in the northeast, Yan was already a thoughtful teenager attuned to the world. He enrolled at the Shanxi Military Academy, one of the few remaining institutions that still functioned amid the Qing court's crumbling authority. There he studied Western strategy, Sun Tzu's art of war, and how to fire a rifle. But what he excelled at most was self-preservation. His classmates remembered him as quiet, reserved, slow to anger, yet when he spoke, people listened. He joined no revolutionary cells, applauded no fiery speeches against the Qing that were sweeping through campuses. From early on, Xishan had chosen a different path, not leading the crowd, but never letting himself be led. And then, history knocked, uninvited. In 1911, the Xinhai Revolution erupted. The Qing dynasty collapsed. Warlords rose from the ashes, each with his own flag, each province its own king. Amid the ruins of empire, Xishan, then just a mid-level officer, began his ascent. Not with bloodshed, but with astonishing patience. For the next 20 years, he never left Shanxi and let no one else enter. Shanxi slowly became his personal realm. People called him Yan Gong, Lord Yan. A warlord not known for spectacle or cruelty, but one whose authority was never questioned. And from that mountain stronghold, Xishan would go on to witness and eventually take part in the fiercest political storms of 20th century China. The quiet man, amid the storm, entering the Northern Expedition. When the drums of the Northern Expedition thundered from the south, echoing across the Yangtze River and rolling toward the rugged mountains of Shanxi. Yan Xishan was already a firmly rooted power in a land shaped by fire and smoke. Unlike the warlords who hastily chose sides, he remained cautious, watching Chiang Kai-shek's every move, weighing carefully who might truly restore order to a fractured China. Chiang needed Shanxi, and he needed Yan Xishan. But Yan was in no rush to submit. Two men, two styles. One a sharp-edged swordsman from the south, the other a silent mountain of the north. The telegrams exchanged between them were cold, layered with tests and tension. Moves in a chess match both men understood well. One wrong step, and the board would never reset. In the end, Yan chose to side with the Kuomintang, but he did not bow. He retained control over Shanxi, kept his own army, and throughout the northern expedition, he remained both an ally and a counterbalance. His troops rarely ventured beyond the borders of their own province. He became a stable rearguard, a neutral axis, unyielding, but never weak. Yan had little faith in lofty revolutionary ideals. He believed in something simpler, keeping Shanxi stable and protecting his people from being crushed under the weight of others' power games. In military councils, while others bickered over territories and titles, Yan often sat in silence, taking notes, before offering a brief remark, one that would quiet the entire room. The northern expedition succeeded. Chiang Kai-shek rose to power. But on the political map of China, one province remained beyond the central government's full grasp: Shanxi. And there, Yan Xishan stood like stone, unmoved by praise, unshaken by threats. He never stepped into Zhongnanhai. He never accepted high office in the Kuomintang. But everyone knew, on the blustery days of Chinese politics, the quiet voice from Shanxi could still tilt the entire board. The quiet man, amid the storm, Yan Xishan and the Tempest of the Second Sino-Japanese War. In 1937, when gunfire erupted at the Marco Polo Bridge, marking the beginning of Japan's full-scale invasion of China, the nation was once again engulfed in a storm of violence and fire. For many warlords, it was a chance to strengthen their grip on power or bargain with both sides. But for Yan Xishan, it was a war that could neither be avoided nor compromised. Shanxi, his province, stood at a strategic crossroads, nestled between both ends of the front line, bordering North China, which fell swiftly into Japanese hands. In those early days of war, Yan did not wait for orders from Nanjing. He mobilized his troops, built defenses, rallied the militia, and called upon students and women alike to join the struggle. He was no orator, no romantic idealist, but in the eyes of the people of Shanxi, he was a leader who felt their pain as his own. Then came the unexpected, a move few could have predicted. Yan Xishan invited the Communist Red Army into Shanxi. As 8th Route Army units, under the banner of anti-Japanese resistance, entered his territory, Yan did not resist. He opened the gates. What seemed impossible, a Kuomintang warlord cooperating with communist forces, took shape in an unlikely alliance. Many within the KMT saw this as betrayal. But Yan was different. He placed little faith in slogans, more in actions. And at that moment, it was the communists from Yan'an who were fighting the Japanese most fiercely. For a time, Shanxi became a rare pilot ground for KMT communist cooperation. Yan's soldiers and the communists fought side by side, sometimes even sharing the same trenches. He allowed schools to be built, cadres to be trained, and even sent his own daughter to study in Yan'an. But trust in wartime politics rarely lasts. By the late 1940s, after Japan's defeat, the cracks began to show. Ideological divisions, personal ambitions, and political agendas resurfaced. Communist units expanded their influence. Their cadres restructured local governments. And Yan, once tolerant, now felt like a stranger in his own land. When civil war broke out once more, he returned to the Kuomintang fold. But the game had changed. His army, once the pride of Shanxi, was now outmatched, squeezed between the communist forces that had grown stronger, better organized, and more determined. The so-called Golden Triangle of Shanxi was no longer an impregnable fortress. Yan Xishan, the man who once balanced the tides, was finally pulled under by the waves. The shadow of a warlord. The final years of Yan Xishan. As the final revolutionary winds swept across northern China and the red flag claimed city after city, Yan Xishan knew his time had come to an end. There was no heroic last stand, no parting proclamation to the land of Shanxi, only a quiet withdrawal. He left with a handful of loyal aides, a few old relics, and a bitterness that never found words. He arrived in Taiwan at the end of 1949, when the small island had become the last refuge of the defeated nationalist forces. But here, no one called him Marshal Yan anymore. He held no power, commanded no soldiers, and was met with only wary eyes from Chiang Kai-shek. To many within the Kuomintang, he was the man who once shook hands with the communists. To the communists, he was nothing more than a reactionary warlord. Between those two worlds, he became a man without a country, no longer belonging to the past, and with no place in the future. Life in Taiwan for Yan Xishan was marked by solitude. He lived simply in a modest house in Taipei, refused all involvement in politics, stayed away from the public eye, and rarely granted interviews. Most of his time was spent reading, journaling, and reflecting on the years gone by. The days when he commanded hundreds of thousands of troops, governed an entire province, and dared to bridge two irreconcilable ideologies. It is said that once, a young reporter sought to interview him about the war of resistance against Japan. Yan offered only a quiet reply. War is something the survivors always ask themselves about, whether they did enough or chose wrong from the very beginning. In 1960, Yan Xishan passed away in silence. There was no state funeral, no solemn ranks of soldiers bidding him farewell. Only a simple wreath, left by an old soldier, with a small note attached. Shanxi has not forgotten you. And perhaps that was all Yan ever wished to keep. Not power, not glory, but the memory of a man who once stood amid war, hatred, and clashing ideologies, and still managed to hold on to a sliver of clarity in the midst of chaos.
Thank you all for following and listening. If you enjoyed and found it interesting, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay tuned for our upcoming videos.